What's up, folks? MC is in the house. Today, a little something different. I happened to come upon one of my Odin shirts today and was inspired to do this. And it is unlike, I think, anything I've done so far, but I think it's going to be useful nonetheless. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a verse from the Hávamál. If you don't know what the Hávamál is, it is a Old Norse poem dated, I believe, it was written down at least in the 1200s, 13th century, although it probably predated that. And it is attributed to the god Odin himself. There's a lot of wisdom in it, a lot of old wisdom. Those of you that know me and my content know that I'm always looking for the commonalities in functional formulas throughout time that have sort of endured. And whereas the applications may be varied amongst people around the planet, we still see the conceptual law and lesson being consistent, right? And the Hávamál for me, in my own religion and my own search and guidance to build better relationships with the virtues that I wish to do so, the Hávamál has been indispensable, in that process and continues to be. Now, today what I'm doing is I'm using what admittedly is my favorite version of the Hávamál, and it's Jackson Crawford's The Wanderer's Hávamál. It is, if you guys haven't checked out Jackson Crawford on YouTube, you should do yourself a favor and do that. Even if you are, if you have no interest in Old Norse or in any of the, Old Norse, religion, mythology, Asatru, whatever you want to classify it as, he is a tremendous source of very, very insightful and educated academic information. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over stanza verse 23. And I'm not going to attempt to read Old Norse to you, but I am going to read the translated version in Crawford's Hávamál. So this is number 23. A fool stays awake all night, worrying about everything. He's fatigued when the morning comes, and his problems remain unsolved. So, old wisdom indeed. Now, if you guys have ever heard me talk about, how the modern man or woman, I'm usually talking to a crowd of men, but how the modern man deals with stress, we know that it is dysfunctional. We know that, there is a tendency these days to create problems that aren't there. If you know anything about the way that the sympathetic system works in the body, how we deal with stress, a analogy that I've heard before and sort of put my own little twist on is the one of the lion and the zebra, right? So when a lion happens upon a zebra in a plain, the zebra says, I got to get out of here. The lion says, I got to get that zebra. Either way, both of them activate that system and it's go time. Well, if the zebra happens to get away from the lion understands that he's not going to get the zebra, so he turns that system off, right? The parasympathetic system is the root of how that, winds up becoming undone. But he's no longer sort of on, right? He's no longer activated by that adrenaline, laden system. But just the same, the zebra, when he notices that he is no longer under threat, he also turns off that system and continues to do whatever it is that he naturally, functionally needs to do. So in nature, we observe, creatures, animals, not getting in their own way when it comes to activating those systems they need for emergencies and allowing them to sort of turn off and deactivate when they're no longer necessary. Well, people, especially modern day people whose time is spent so much more in our own heads, we're at the point where we've created imaginary lions, right? So as opposed to having a legitimate threat and getting that adrenaline surge and all of the reactions and consequences of that system being activated, we think about issues, we think about problems, we think about threats, and the perception of these imaginary lions is constantly activating that system. Well, the problem is with these imaginary lions is there is no definitive time to turn that sort of activated system off. So we wind up allowing these reactions, these states, that system to sort of linger, and it lingers dysfunctionally. And these are the things that'll affect your sleep, your ability to pay attention and focus, your digestion. There's a whole slew of things that happen basically by worrying about things, right? We could sort of be aware and be prepared, right? So become aware, be prepared. We could do that, but there's hardly ever an argument, or none that I could think of, where worrying is of value. You know, being concerned about things that are in your control, well, prepare for them. And if they're not under your control, then awareness is just about as much as you should invest in that, right? So just to get back and reread this verse of the Hávamál, this is number 23. A fool stays awake all night, worrying about everything. He's fatigued when the morning comes, and his problems remain unsolved. We have to understand what is under our control and what is not under our control. We need to invest fully our resources in developing ourselves and increasing our ability to deal with those things in our control. But we need to have the wherewithal, and there are a lot of different paths to having this understanding, but ultimately we need to develop the ability to not worry about things that aren't in our control. Now, for some of you, that could be meditation, that could be exercise, that could be, some sort of a hobby. But for others, a lot of times it's something that's not so functional. It's, getting drunk, it's getting high, it's overeating, it's taking something that preoccupies your mind that allows you to sort of turn off that system, right? That emergency system. But we wind up, figuratively shooting ourselves in the foot in the process, right? So we need to, as modern men who no longer have to get out and are so busy working, we don't have time to worry about imaginary, lions. We need to find those productive means of getting control of our reaction to those sort of stimuli that'll have us perceive things that are not in our control as threats. I hope you enjoyed this. Something I just decided to do. Maybe I'll do a couple more if you guys are getting a kick out of it. But there's still power and information and old wisdom available. Even if you are not a Odinist, a heathen, an Asachur, and you are interested in getting this book and finding that out on your own. All right. So appreciate you guys watching. Talk to you soon.